Hi, Nina, Nicole, Jeff, Nikita, welcome. So we are covering today how to overcome the fear of failure. And I have nothing planned. So this must be like full leaning into overcoming the fear of failure, because I have nothing written down and I have no idea what we're going to do today. So here we are. I thought, though, we could start is I'd love to get an idea from you around, like, what is it about? What makes failure so fearful for you, or what do you struggle with around the fear of failure? So I'd love to hear from you first. Hey, Andy. So, hey, Mel. Nina.
Hey, sorry, I'm on my phone. I'm not navigating everywhere. I don't know. As I'm surprised, I don't know what the question was. Okay, but can I say something?
Yes.
I want to know. Marcia looks completely different.
Because she just did the Demartini method and she's transcended. So she's become the Demartini method. So of course she's going to look different.
You look like 20 years younger or something. You seem very happy about something, and whatever it is, I want to know about it. Have you got drugs?
She had a because we just did it for those that weren't there yesterday. We had the transformation day. So we had 5, actually it ended up being 6 hours of applying the Demartini method, but 2 of the hours was spent on the mystical transcendental experience. And it was like unbelievable and entangled with Marcia doing the Demartini method on the Demartini method. So maybe that's why. So the question, thank you for sharing. So the question is, when you think about the fear of failure, and when you think about just failure in general, tell me your story. Tell me where you're at. Hi, Michael, Thomas, Linda, Jolene. So who's going to go first?
Hey, Tanya, I can go first.
Great, Nikita.
So fear of failure for me is equivalent to the ego taking a hit. And yeah. I wonder if I'm not good enough. So the not good enough part goes back to my childhood. Where my mom was like, I don't know, I felt around her that I was not good enough because we didn't raise up to her standard. And as an adult, it's the same. Not good enough. What else can I do? What more I need to do? I'm so tired of trying to do more, and then it becomes cyclic.
Yeah. So does anyone else feel that way as well? If they have a look at the fear of failure, so Patricia's saying yes, that underneath that fear is really the perception of not feeling good enough. And then the result, or then maybe put yourself in positions where you fail or the fear comes up, and that's overriding. It's not the fear of failure that overrides the fear of not being good enough that overrides. So Elise says, given wrong information to someone, or in terms of the fear of failure. So I hear this might be maybe more in a work context. So we're just exploring the idea of fear of failure to start with. Given wrong information, not really making much difference for me or others, or not really seeing the great difference in my life. Thank you for sharing. So what is it for you? Are we able to, we can tailor something a little bit more specific. If I know how does the fear of failure affect you? What does it mean to you? Where do you have the fear of failure? What's your challenge with the fear of failure? What's your problem underneath the problem when it comes to the fear of failure? Tell me, team. Right. Oh, Sue says, I can't get it wrong. I don't know enough. So that's the driving of like not knowing enough that overwhelms then and comes into the fear of failure for me as well, Christina. Let me tell you a story. I went on a date today. Can I tell you one of my dating stories? Would that be okay? Would that be okay? So I had a interaction with an individual. We had a few conversations on a dating app, and his picture, I thought I could be attracted to him. And we had, and he said, I believe in radical uncertainty. And I was like, well, and he's like, but I'm uncertain that there's nothing really to be certain of. And I said, well, you've at least got to believe in something. You've at least got to believe that you're uncertain. So you are believing in something. You can't believe in nothing. Like you can't be completely uncertain. And so we had this little bit of and we talked about Albert Camus, who's like this, he talks about absurdity. And so we're having this conversation by message. And then we decide to meet. So we met today. His opening line, would you like to hear it? So by the way, he doesn't look anything like his photo. Nothing. He is actually lied on his profile, and he is, instead of 46, actually 52. He sent that in a message after we met. Anyway, his opening line was, I've just been scrubbing my boat for 2 hours and I think I have worms on me. And I'm like, I don't even know what to say. What do I like? Ew. And I'm like, so then we sit down and we're at a coffee shop and we're talking. He's talking about, like, I don't know much about sea and ocean, but I think there's worms in the ocean apparently. And it's like, what a catch, total catch. So then he tells me that some of his like childhood trauma, and that he's not very good at relationships. I'm like, this is not, it's almost like he is setting himself up for failure. It's like, there's no chance that there's going to be a spark. I mean, if I have to get through the worms and I have to get through the childhood trauma that he's got to work through, and that it's then there's going to be some kind of like sex appeal and we're going to have a relationship together. But it was almost this, I think he's looking for a fishing woman, not me. But it's almost like he's putting a barrier up to even want to go into a relationship, because there's no opportunity to even kind of be maybe even successful or go to a second date if there's just this resistance and detraction from what they share. So maybe it's his screening process. It's like, yeah, can you love me in my rawness and my pain? Can you still want to be with me? And maybe some people can. So we want to look at, like, do we set ourselves up for failure? Maybe we do that around our clients and our business. Do we then say, well, I'm not good enough? And then when you start talking to people in a client dynamic, you stumble or you forget, or you have difficulty in connecting with them. And is that your then proves me right? I'm not good enough because this individual didn't buy from me, or this individual maybe in this guy's case, didn't go on a second date with me. It reinforces that underneath driver of not being good enough, or then supports that. So he's the perfect client. Maybe you can give him a session. He did ask, is this turning into a counseling session? And I was like, no, it's not, because I'm not getting no, it's not. So if you can maybe think about a moment that you perceive that fear of failure bubbling up inside, and you connect in with that moment, what I'm going to get you to question and inquire is, like, what's driving underneath that? What's the fear essentially underneath the fear? Like for this guy, it might be of being like vulnerable and opening up, or the fear of being, in his perception, maybe hurt, or have not the fear of having to, compromise in a relationship to someone else's life when he wants to live a soul when he prefers living a solo life. I don't know. But for you in your moment, what's underneath that? So if you want to share that in the chat section, that would be amazing. Nina, I see your hand is up.
I'm just really struggling with not keeping up with. You're really
worms.
My wheels turn slow. No, I'm cancelling that you ever said that.
Okay.
No. Thank you for sharing. Never again. Like I can't not visualize that.
I know.
I've had a nice day today, Tanya. Okay. Fuck. What was my question? Yeah, failure. I can't even begin to dig the surface of failure, like until I think of its opposite. Like failure only exists because of our perception of success, isn't it?
Well, it's our attachment to success.
Well, it's
that we find failure painful.
Oh, I sometimes find relief in failure. Like, thank God, I failed that relationship, or I failed that thing I didn't want to finish. Like it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's a perception of, like I can't think of. I'm not scared of. I'm only. Oh, okay. So the attachment. So the addiction.
But you do bring up a really beautiful point that sometimes if we have grief and relief in success and failure, that sometimes the grief of failure is louder than the relief of failure. But if you have the ending of a relationship and you're relieved that it failed, you'd be able to say that there's more resentment in the relationship. You wanted out, but you didn't know how to get out of the relationship. And you're like, oh, so glad that that's gone.
Because I was addicted to how it succeeded initially.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there could be many factors, but ultimately you wanted out of the relationship. So you're celebrating that you're out, essentially. So you're celebrating the failure. Has anyone else felt that in the ending of a relationship where it's like relief? It's almost success. Like I felt like when my husband and I separated, that I felt, even though it was very challenging to make the decision to leave, I still perceived it to be, if I'm going to label success and failure, more successful for us to separate earlier in the relationship than wait 10 years and for us to have eroded each other, or more upset or bitter or challenged, or him not being able to find his purpose because of it. So in a way, the ending was, I perceived, if I'm putting those labels on, more successful to do it sooner rather than later. So stepping out more in the world and not convinced by what I know has worth for others to pay for. So I stay in the known. And that is a dynamic when it comes to failure. When we look at, we get comfortable in the known and uncomfortable in the unknown. And so if we step into the unknown, that's scary because you don't have control anymore. You lose a sense of control in the unknown. And if you want to have things, in your power, what you might perceive in your power, then the moment that it's in the unknown is other people have maybe more say, other people have more in the driving seat. And so that can be more scary. And therefore the fear of failure is really the fear of the can be driven by the fear of the unknown. Sue says her attachment, which is, I've got to get it right. We do have that conditioning in us to dot our I's and cross our T's and have the perfection dynamic definitely at play. Jolene says, thank you for your example, because now I find my greatest fear of failure is the intimate relationship. So my energy is set in the mode that I don't get into any relationship since more than 10 years because of that fear. I keep myself from failing. It's a fear, and at the same time, it's a great desire, which is that almost avoid, like you want a relationship, but avoid a relationship. And I think one of the binds I've found in this work is if we avoid a relationship, we're sometimes also wanting to avoid being infatuated, because in the beginning of a relationship, you can't help but get infatuated and think about them and be romanticizing about them, and they're occupying space and time. Be like, no, I can't, no, draw back. And so I don't want to do that. So then I don't want to get infatuated. So then I don't want to get in a relationship because I don't want someone to overtake my life and my thoughts. And so then that can, it's like, how do you have to be able to reconcile? Is it okay to be infatuated in the beginning and give yourself 3 months to kind of go a bit infatuated and build a relationship and a connection and a bond and then do the work? Or do you do the work as you go along from the very beginning so you can love and appreciate them from the very beginning? It's like you have to find some kind of rhythm in how you navigate potentially through that. But one of the things that I love most is, especially in the intimate relationship space, if we have these walls that we build up, so we protect ourselves from love, we also don't allow love to come in, and we can't really truly like love. Like we can love maybe internally, but we want to be able to love externally. We want to have essentially the Demartini method breaks our walls down. Like it stops the barriers that we put up around ourselves and the things that we harden ourselves. Like this worm guy, I don't know like how to refer with the boat guy, has a lot of barriers and walls that he's put up and just hardened and become like rigid to the idea, maybe like wants a relationship but scared of having a relationship. And so as we apply the Demartini method and work through all our past relationships and see the perfection in that, then the result of it can be that you can then open up and have more love and gratitude. And then maybe the idea of a relationship can come through. Christina says, I perceive the failure in values hurts more than lower values. Oh. How does that work? Let me think about it. Oh, so it's important and unimportant. So what we perceive as highest on our values is important, and what we perceive on lower on our values is lesser or unimportant. And so if you fail in the unimportant things, it doesn't really matter. But if you fail in the things that are important, it's going to hurt more, which then you have to question, is it really truly a value? Because, well, it wouldn't be the top value anyway, because in our top value, we are prepared to take the pain and the hit and the challenge and the hurt. You know, we embrace it anyway, even though it's difficult. Like you have animals and you still want to go and be with them, even though it's challenging and it's difficult sometimes and you have to be at home, but you still do it. You still do it anyway. So I would say maybe it's more of an important, something underneath that is more about importance than, yeah. Nicole says, I don't put my photography out there in competitions and for sale due to not selling or getting feedback that it's terrible. And I think artists have this, don't they? Because everyone has a different perception. So I think that you guys, as an artist, I know there's a few in the room, that you guys would have to have the biggest, because people will have the opinion about your work and they'll either want it or don't want it. But I guess that's the same with coaching as well. People either want your service or they don't want your service. Like it's set in, like it's the same. But it's being able to rise above that whole idea of success and failure, because at some stage, if we get bound to success and failure, it's like you think you're successful when you sell a piece of art, and you're a failure if you don't. You're successful if you have X number of clients, and then you're a failure if you don't. You're a success if you earn X dollars, and then a failure if you don't. And so this success and failure is very externally driven. And when you're externally driven with something, take it away, and your sense of identity and who you are is challenged, maybe even shattered, if enough of the failure. If you're like one particular client, he had a brokerage business. And so it was his identity, his business, finances. He was deal making. He was a provider for his family. So he had a lot of his values being met at work, and he had made a deal that didn't go very well, and it was the demise of his company. And it was really rapidly, and really, like, he didn't have a lot of time to process it. And so he had failure in so many of his values that he had a huge identity crisis, because then he's like, who am I? This is also pre-COVID. And it's like, he had to like really kind of like, he was suicidal at certain points. He was severely depressed for a period of time, because he's trying to like re-find his identity that's outside of those things, because he had compounding failures all at once that led him to have his identity crisis. And so essentially, if we wrap our identity and our sense of failure in what we do, and that be our driver, like, I want to be successful, then we're going to really struggle with failure. So if we're attached to success, we're going to fear failure. So you see it in some of the younger generation, where they think that they should be billionaires, or at least millionaires, by the time they're 20, and they should know their career purpose, and they should be going, and they should be making a really big like, you know, growth spurt from the time they finish school. But I mean, a lot of people actually fail multiple times before they become and do something with their life. And so if we have an attachment to wanting to be successful, like this client had an attachment that when he joint ventured with another company, that would then mean greater levels of success. And so he had pictured and imagined what his life would be like, plus also thinking that he would also have more free time. And so, yes, definitely does he have a value shift when he had his failures? He did, and he got to spend more time with his family, with what he wanted to do. But it wasn't, he ended up going and doing some venture capital with people. And so that was more aligned with what he wanted to do, but he didn't find that out until after he had the failures. And then he had to do a lot, like we did a lot of work together for him to like find like what does he really want? Like he actually did that business because of his parent. It came from his dad, and he took on his dad's business and then grew it. And so it kind of got to the point where he didn't really feel like he loved it. He loved like the client and the connection and the team building, and he loved that side of it. But it wasn't really what was underneath and in his heart for what he pictured he wanted to do with his life. So the failure, the kind of phoenix burning and then rising again, was that experience that he got to now get on to what is actually more his purpose. But he needed to have that, I'm going to take everything away from you, and you're going to have nothing left. And then you're going to, be able to find what it is that you're here to do. Because if not, the money was drowning his desire, which sometimes happens with business people who are, kind of really enmeshed in business. It's hard for them to let go of the money. So I don't necessarily think there was a point where he said, I want to have a value shift and then, burn it all down. I think just underneath, maybe there's a soul's desire. I don't know maybe how to describe it, but maybe there's a higher desire and drive, like he's here to do something purposeful and he has a greater mission. And so that was his that was an opportunity, whether he, I mean, I know he kind of created it, but maybe there's a soul driven purpose in there as well. Something to ponder anyway, something I think about. I wonder if his values shifted subconsciously and his attention went elsewhere. Yeah, potentially. I know that he's like, kids were like, they were, I don't think they were like 15, 16, they were getting too close to the end of school, and he just knew that once that was like the last hurrah before they started to go off and do uni and go off and fend into the world. So he also knew that because he'd done so much work that he hadn't really been around, so he wanted to be around. So there was kind of a few of those dynamics. Yeah, I think, yeah. So I was thinking, as more that we do the method, people we attract will change as well. So now I'm questioning myself, if Tanya is still going through with something like today's situation with the guy, then do I really want to put anything on this method? I think what happens is when we apply the Demartini method, each time we do it, we might have a shift, like we might have a value shift after completing a Demartini method. Like Marcia was a great example yesterday when we had the transformation day and she applied the Demartini method on the Demartini method. And something that kind of came out at the end is that she's like, actually, I want to really go more into just applying the Demartini method and being not a purist, so, you know, but more honing in and focusing on that. And so then really applying the work does get you maybe more congruent with what you're here to do and maybe more clear on your purpose. But if you sit there and go, well, it doesn't matter if I do something or don't do something, then that's sitting in indifference, which is kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say failure, but there'll be an element of maybe wanting to keep things the same. And I think when we sit in indifference, it's not such a great space to sit in, because we don't do anything. So we may as well like take the punt and just go and do it. I've never heard of anyone applying the Demartini method and then doing something at the end and going and doing something that they just think is like crazy stupid and they should have never gone and done that. And, you know, like most of the time people get more clearer about who they are, not less clear about who they are. Because as you answer the questions, you get to answer it, like you get to know your values, what's important, the things that move you and give you goosebumps and tears are the things that are really, really valuable to you. And so the method is already giving you feedback to what is important. Okay, Sue says, Patricia, parents and grandparents such as old one, even though I knew something was not clear. Maybe I missed something there. Iona is, my 3 fears these days are failing as an entrepreneur and turning back to being employed, the fear of failing at being original and being perceived as a copycat and postponing developing own products and programs, and the fear of being refused by clients and therefore not doing the selling and failing at scaling the business. So I would look at, if we have all those fears, we have to look at the attachment. What's the success that's driving all of those? Because underneath you hear that, it's like that sometimes people perceive that it's successful to be an entrepreneur and it's a failure to be employed. If you have an individual who's going to a 9 to 5 job, they sometimes can be perceived as lesser than someone who is an entrepreneur who's making their way in the world and earning their own money and doesn't have a ceiling on the amount of money that they can earn. And that's more prestigious than someone who's employed. And so we can have this success and failure on that dynamic. So if we're attached to, and we think and we set ourselves up to say that success and I have to have that, we can then end up getting the complete inverse of failing as a result, just to break our infatuation. So some people come out of employed. So I spoke to someone a few weeks ago and they had been in the corporate world for maybe, I guess, 20 years. And then they jumped down and they did about 10 years in like building their own company. So over that 10-year period, they just struggled with not having a regular pay, struggled with a lack of community, struggled with having a team, because a corporate, you have a whole team around you who is also helping you. And so they really struggled then going into that entrepreneurial style thinking, because they didn't have it. It wasn't trained in them, wasn't learned or taught inside of them. And so there was but they thought it was going to be more successful, but they just found it really difficult. And no matter how much they tried and they slogged and they tried to make it work, it just didn't work. And so they've gone back to the employee, like a different, and like they're a executive in a insurance company. And so it's just comfortable. It's more comfortable in there. It's more like easier in their perception to get things done and get things moving than it is to do it solo. But if we have preconceived ideas of what success should look like, again, if we don't meet that or match that, we're going to beat ourselves down, and that's not going to bring in new clients. That's not going to attract the individual, you know, the partner that you want if you're attached to how it should be. So the fear of failing and being original, I think if you learn from enough people, you'll know that people learn from everyone. Like you might be able to learn from, if you go on Instagram, you do some learning, you're on Facebook, you do some learning, come to Max and Breath, you do learning, you're Demartini, you do some learning, you might have other people and individuals that you're learning from. And so essentially we're going to be learning and taking some of those learnings and then sharing it. So if we then have an attachment for an original idea, I mean, what's an original idea anyway? Is there really one? There's never, I mean, yeah, which is just like, so it's really like, what would be an original idea? Because you know that when Edison just, you know, did the light bulb, he wasn't the first individual in the world to ever create a light bulb. There was someone across the other side of the world also creating a light bulb at the same time. So we have these ideas that it is like a original idea. Sometimes I've come up with moments like, oh my God, that's like genius. And then there's someone else who's like, no, I've heard it before. And I was like, oh, well, it's an original idea to me. Like it was my first time it was an original idea for me. I've never heard of it before, but someone else might be talking about it. And so essentially if we're attached to that, I've got to come up with something original, because what does it matter if it's original or not? What happens if the idea is just making a difference in someone's life? And I know that sometimes I've said something to someone, you know, like my partner, or, you know, like thinking of someone in particular over and over again. And then someone else comes in and says exactly the same thing. And they're like, whoa, that's amazing. And I'm like, hang on, I've just told you that like 20 times. And then like that one lands and that one drops. So it's sometimes less about like what the idea is, but it's more about how does the idea land and what difference does that idea make? Because sometimes we have to, especially the work that we do if you're a facilitator, there's sometimes when we're sharing information and we're sharing work, we might want to just share it at the most simplest level, like making it too complex and an original idea that's hard to understand will just over someone's head and they don't understand it. But when we chunk it down to something that's like so simple, so easy for them to understand, they're like, oh my God, it lands for me, and it makes a profound difference. So I wouldn't, if there was a way that we can work through that attachment to an original idea. And if we even think about Demartini, for example, he's really come up with one original idea, which is the Great Discovery. He hasn't come up with like 50 original ideas. The Demartini method isn't necessarily original. It's original in its form, in its, you know, in the form it is, but talking about, you know, cracking a fantasy and having attachments, and that's like been in psychology for a while. So it is also then going, well, how many original ideas do you want to come up with in your lifetime? And maybe it is like, if that is one thing that you want, put it down on your you know, your list, your divine design, and say, that's the one thing I want. I do want to come up with one thing that is original. But you can have an original idea, but you have no plan behind you of how you get it out to the world. So what's the point of having an original idea if you don't get an opportunity, then go share it as well? So it's not just about the idea, but it's like, how are you going to go implement that idea and get it in the hands of people so they can start doing it for the masses? Talking about it, actually, I better not say it because then you'll know who it is. And then the worm man, he had an original idea. Actually, he does. Let me, no, I'm not going to, because I don't want to, you can Google him, and that's probably not such a good idea. Marie Folio gave a nice example. In New York City, there are thousands of pizzerias. So if you want to open one, you should give up because they're already out there. So she says that my favorite one maybe wouldn't be there. Many people, many styles, different tastes, and different ideas. And so that's it. Like, if you can bring your flavor of how you do things out into the world, that's the thing that's going to be your point of difference. So maybe it isn't about finding an original idea, but it's like, how do you be original with all the ideas that are out there that really is a display of who you are, which is actually maybe what Marcy and I were talking about yesterday in the Power workshop, where we talked about, yesterday in the Transformation Day, I was talking about the Power workshop. So the Power workshop, I think, is an original, it's not an original idea because people have done walks and personal development, but in the process of how it works out, it's original. Like, no one else is doing that over like 33 lessons to help someone having different focuses on different days to help people awaken to their purpose. But it's essentially, it's a lot of different ideas come together in an original way, but it's it's the things that I also love, and like combining that together, which I would encourage you to do the same as well. If you go through and look at all your past and history and what are the things that you love, and combine them to make something, and share it in a program, share it in a product, and share that with the world, because then you're essentially sharing you with the world. And if you love you and you go share it with the world, then it's okay. But if you're trying to share it, your original idea out to the world, and I want you to love this idea, and they don't love it, then you're like devastated. But if you've shared you out to the world, if they love you, you're like, I don't care, bye. If you like, they appreciate you, that's okay. If they don't appreciate it, that's okay, because you're comfortable in who you are. So it's a different, it's much wiser to go out to the world and be you and focus on you and the biggest expression of you out there into the world, than trying to be successful or failure, because you're not even thinking about, am I being successful? Like, when I go out and facilitate, I'm not going, was it successful today? Did I fail today? I was like, was I being? How did that go? Did I feel like I was faking it? I don't really feel like that. I definitely had moments way back in the beginning that I didn't ever feel faking it, but I was learning the ropes, we might say, learning the lingo. So we want to be able to, if we can be ourselves, it's easier to handle rejection. It's easier to handle no's. It's easier to handle the pushbacks, because you are being yourself. But if you try to be something else or someone else and you get knocked back, it's guttering sometimes. Linda, who does art therapy, says, I encourage my students to copy my designs because it calms the mind, and to not have to come up with something or like come up with the idea. At the end of the session, each person has to add their own twist without added their own twist without realizing it. Patricia says, it's not about you anyway. You're allowing the divine flow through you, whether facilitating or making art. Thank you for the reminder. And when you allow that divine energy to flow through, how can you judge it? So you are coming up with original ideas. So I totally love that. It's until I started working on myself and experiencing the failures there, this is Thomas, that I became more balanced on the drawbacks of it and cracking the fantasy, and then started to appreciate the benefits of working in a job too. Definitely. So, hey, Diane. Welcome. So tell me, it's like adding your own secret ingredient to the common food dish. That secret ingredient is you. Yeah. It is one of the things, though, that I think if we look at the fear of failure and we really deeply explore it, if you know who you are, then it's easy to fail. It's easier to go in and fail at something because you know who you are. But if you try and do something and you fail at it, you can feel like you can feel like an idiot. You can feel embarrassed. You can go through all the feels that the failure brings, because remember that sometimes failure is that thing that catapults you back into what is really, truly important. So, hi, Justin. How are you going?
Tanya, can you elaborate on that?
Good.
Because that really resonated.
Oh, what did I say?
It's easier to fail.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Really, that really resonated, because it's like, it is. Like when I'm being me, it's like, fuck yeah, I can't wait to fail. But it's like when you're not, it's like, I don't want to fail. Yeah.
Okay, so if we
I resonate with that.
If we talk about it from, say, a facilitator coaching business. So let's say, for example, someone has come in through a training program and said, well, I want to be a coach. Or you've got two people who say, I'm going to be a coach. And they go, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And one's subordinating and the other one is not. So they go out to the world and they start doing all the things that help to create a business. Maybe they go out on social media. Maybe they start doing networking. Maybe they start speaking, or just going out there and speaking more to different people or at a larger platform. So they just go out there and start building and growing a network. And then after maybe a year or two, the individual that has been subordinating or doing it because they thought, oh, what an amazing idea because they do it and I want to be like them, and so they go out to do it. And so, but then after a while, their actions don't lead to the decisions, which don't lead to the outcome that they want. When they handle it, when they get to a challenge and something is difficult, all of a sudden they shut down. They don't know. They hide from it. They move away from that challenge because it's not important. Maybe there's, and so each of those challenges, after a while, and if you've especially if you've subordinated to people and you've subordinated to the outside world how you think you should do, like if you say, well, everyone's on this particular platform doing this particular thing with their marketing, I need to do that as well, but that's not you. That's not who you are, and that's not your expression. Like we have Julie and Bridget who are in our community, and they have a podcast, and they've just achieved 400 podcasts. They love speaking, but it's not a video podcast, it's an audio podcast. And so if they said you have to go and do a video, I don't know about this, but if you do a video and you had to, put it out on YouTube every day or every week, maybe that's not what they want to do, but audio is their form. Some people love writing, they love the words and they want to put it out on words. Some people love pictures. Some people don't even want to be on social media because they don't really even enjoy social media, but get them in a room of a networking event and get them mingling face to face with people, they come alive. And so if they then have subordinated to how they think that they should be doing their business, and they're minimizing and they're doing it how they're going to fail at it. And it's going to be hard. They're going to go, I don't feel like I'm myself. I feel like I'm doing what I'm told to do, but not what is truly an expression of me. But then you have the other individual who said, I want to go and do a coaching business. And it's like, what do I really love? What really lights me up? Who am I? How do I want to go out and express to the world? What type of people do I want to work with? And then go and serve the world. That individual can continue to grow and grow and grow, because it's not like they're hiding, they're not pretending, they're not trying to be someone else, they're not trying to fit into a market and do what the market is telling them, but they're being themselves and allowing a market to come to them. So it's a very different dynamic, subordination versus being true to yourself. And then the outcome of that is very different. You can long-term stay in something if it's congruent with you. I mean, I'm now 14 years into the Demartini method. I haven't turned around and said after a few years, it's not really for me. I have opportunities that come up that allow more and more of the application of the Demartini method or facilitating the Demartini. There have been times where it's just like nothing happens because I love them. I feel like it's congruent with me and my story and my experiences that I've had. And I love lines, and I love boxes, and I love ticking things off, and all of that. But so I feel like that's a beautiful expression of me. But I know that some, maybe some other people who've come in, they are more, maybe they're a lot more somatic orientated in their body, and therefore struggle with the Demartini method. Maybe some people, want to actually go and do a completely different path. And so it's about ultimately knowing who you are first, then going to figure out what you want to do with your career and how you want to show up in your career. It's not build your career first and hope you'll fit into it. It's figure out who you are first, then figure out your career and build on that. Does that help? Yeah. So one of the things, I have a client that I'm working with at the moment, and they've been struggling around, well, actually I have 2 clients, interesting enough. And one does a lot of work. There's a lot of things going on for them, and they've just got a lot of kind of components in their life. So probably not the best story. But the other one is they've been kind of following a trend of how they should be showing up in business. And they had just gotten to a point where they didn't even know who they were. They didn't even know what they wanted. And so when I asked, well, who do you want to serve? And they're like, I don't know, maybe kind of in this ballpark, but I don't really know. And I'm like, well, hang on, before you do that, then do you know who you are? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what lights you up? Well, I don't know. Okay. So what's been really meaningful? I don't know. Okay, so what kind of type of demographic do you, it's like, well, I've kind of chopped and changed, and I've done it for a little bit, and I've stopped and did something else, and I started something else, and I stopped and did something else, and I haven't been able to really follow anything through in all these years. And I'm like, okay, so I think it's more of an identity issue, and let's figure out who you are first. Let's figure out who you are outside of being a mother, outside of being, a business owner, but outside of all of those things, and figure out who you are first, you first, and then the world. And that's just resulted, they've just started being able to go out onto social media from a more authentic place, and a place that they feel like they're showing up, that it's them and not someone else. But everyone goes through the journey. If we go back to the copycatting thing, everyone goes through that journey when you first start learning something, that you do like follow people and you just kind of sound like them. But there has to be coming a point where you have to go and question, how do I make this mine? How do I make this like me? How to make this sound like me? How do I make this sound different, to hear it from a different spin? And then you get to have your expression in what you do. You find your identity in it. So hopefully that helps. I'm big on like identity finding, especially people who don't really know who they are, or they're having a like crisis like this. The broker guy who's now doing venture capitalist raising. So he had to go through a journey of really rediscovering who he was first before he decided what he was going to do with his career. When you have a massive identity crisis where everything implodes and you have very little left, you have to do a massive like rediscovering, which takes time. Do you have some questions or processes to find your identity, self-reflection besides values? A life review can be really helpful. Love a life review. So you just look at your decades and you look at the things in your childhood that really lit you up. That are the things that really truly lit you up, that you're doing for other people. And so it's just really going and dissecting all of those things. And then if you come to our Maximum Growth New Year's transformation, we have a section in our divine design that you have access to, and it's called your Goosebump and Tears of Gratitude diary. So if you remember that part, yeah. And so that part is where your physiology is giving you feedback your entire life. So if you find those moments that have just moved you and opened your heart and shifted you on a physiological level. So because those are like your soul moments essentially. So you want to get a whiteboard or whatever it is, your cupboards, and just find that as a slate, and then get post-it notes, stick them on when you remember moments that have really moved you, and then put them all up on a wall. Take a step back, look at it, and just ask, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to, what feedback are you trying to give to me? And then you might be able to see, you've got to go macro, right? So we're not going micro, all the little moments are the micro moments that your physiology and your soul is giving you feedback to, but you have to step back and go, what's the macro view right now? Is it relationships? Is it health? Is it people? Is it travel? Like, what is it? Is it expression? Like, you've got to find that common thread, and maybe there's a few different threads, but what's that common thread? And then that will give you it'll begin to give you a greater sense of identity. And the other is doing the Demartini method on side A. Not that you always do side A and B, as you know, but it's side A. Infatuated, definitely do that, because we will struggle to find an identity if we are minimizing ourselves relative to other people. And that sets us up for failure, because you then turn back at your life and say, well, whose life have I lived? I've lived a life for everyone else, not for me. And then that's, you imagine on your deathbed where you've lived a life for everyone else and what other people want, and minimized yourself relative to other people. And on your deathbed, is that you get what I'm talking about? That you then go, well, whose life did I even live a life? Was I living a life, or was I living someone else's life, or was I living a life to please other people? So the more we can apply the side A and side B on the people that we subordinate to, the more we're able to free ourselves out of that box that we're living in to express ourselves. So identifying your voids and cross-referencing that with your values is also helpful too. Yes, but here's where I differ with Demartini, and you can agree or disagree, is totally fine. If you are subordinating, your values don't necessarily show up in the way that your true values. But if you do enough of the Demartini method where you dissolve the subordination to other people, then your true values will come through. That's my opinion. So top regret of dying, right, is I wish I lived true to me. Is that the, did you Google it?
That's in the book. The five
Bonnie.
Yeah.
It is true. That's like, I wish I'd been more true. And so if you can use that, but then you have to know, do you know who you are? Like, if I look at my consistency of what I've been focused on for the last, if I look at the Demartini method, consistent with that, health and wellness, consistent with that, kind of family is morphed and changed over the time, but it's been pretty consistent. Finance, pretty consistent. Travel, except for the hiatus of COVID, but yes, the hiatus there, but did when it was available. And so that's been pretty consistent. Like my actions and who I am is pretty consistent. That hasn't changed a lot, but some people are still figuring themselves out. So I agree with the subordination component. Thank you. Yeah, it definitely doing the work definitely makes a really big difference.
Tanya,
Yeah.
so as you mentioned earlier about when we subordinate, our values we don't really see our true highest values. And I know that John, he says it's not sustainable for long periods of time. However, yesterday when I worked on this idea and look at Lakshmi's journey, could see that she basically, her highest values was a subordination. for a number of years
Mm.
until she really decide to be true to herself. So for a number of years, she was a bit living not really her high. I'm like,
well, she was definitely getting needs of hers met and getting values of hers met. So, but if we look at highest values more along the lines of like, what's your mission and purpose and what you like that, like the telos, then, but that's not to deny that maybe part of that was leading into what she's doing now. I don't know, because we don't really know what she's doing now. So yeah. So let me know if you have any extra questions around the fear of failure, or you have something you'd like to share. So we've talked about the fear of failure and finding the problem underneath the problem to discover what's really driving that fear. Maybe worth doing an exploration of all the things that you fear in the 7 areas of life. What are your fears? And then asking the fears of failure, and then what's underneath each of those. So if it is like that feeling of not being good enough relative to a parent, you wouldn't work on just the direction. You wouldn't go and work on a TAI, trait action inaction of not being good enough, because that's how you feel. Plus it also has some morality in it. You would work on who did you perceive not feeling good enough relative to. Father, not being good enough, and that's how you felt. And then you'd work on that your father, and apply the Demartini method on them, so that you work on the dynamics that were happening that made you perceive to feel that way, and fundamentally change the way you feel. Because I think everyone has, and I'm curious to know, team, like what is your, like if you had an underlying one, like an underlying not good enough, I can't get it right, I can't trust anyone, like what's your, someone's going to leave, like do you know what your underlying, thought pattern that comes up over and over again? Because if you can know what that is and know what dynamic created that perception, go clear it. This is why when we come at maximum growth classes and we come and do the work every week, is because as we do it every week of the year, you get to go deeper and deeper with the work. And if you can hit it at a really core level, instead of going, why can't I get my business to grow? And why can't I help my business to take it and have more clients? It's because that perception of like not being enough or not being good enough is driven by the dynamic you had with your father of feeling like no matter what you did was never good enough because you perceived him to be critical of you. Go do that. Go to your dad and do a critical and what you admired in him, and clear it at a deep level, so that fundamental unconscious driver shifts and changes, and then your business changes. So instead of working on that surface level dynamic, go deep and find out go get curious about what's really driving and find the problem underneath the problem. It will make a massive difference. We do actually have doors open coming in April. So if you know anyone who wants to come along to our maximum growth classes, we have doors open for the month of April, and then we do close them again. They won't open again until October. So we're only opening in April and October. So I highly recommend that if you have people who want to come along to those classes. If you are already a member, we're just on whatever you paid last month, you'll pay again last year, you'll pay again this year. So if it's something you want to come and do some deeper work, highly recommend. We're also going to have a little play with some of the work that we do this year, and we're going to do maybe do the Demartini method on time, or on nature or the ocean, or we're going to be a little bit more creative as well with the Demartini method in one of the sessions. So that one's going to be fun. Can you imagine doing it on time? I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be fun. We won't do it during October or April when we have daylight saving changes, because that would just, I think, mess with everyone. So we've also been able to cover that attachment to success. So remember that if you're driven to want to be successful and you have success to come in a particular pretty box with a bow on top and what it looks like, and at any time that it doesn't match that and you don't meet that success, you feel failure and that hurts and that's guttering, then check in what's the driver and you want to equilibrate that. Then we've also kind of dug deep underneath the layer of all of that and looked at identity, and know that if you know who you are, then you can go and express yourself, create original ideas, you can go and serve people, you can go and build a business when you know who you are and what your expression, how you want to show up in the world. But if you don't know who you are and you struggle with that and you're still trying to find your identity, sometimes it's a test and learn thing. If you can lean into failure and you're still trying to figure out who you are, let me test this. No, that doesn't work. Okay, come back. Let me test it again. Oh, that's not it. We're getting closer a little bit, going test it again. So that's more the test and learn experiment, or you just go inward, figure out who you are, and then go out to the world. Either way works. So we've got a bit. I hope that you can take some lessons and values and learning from our topic tonight. Linda says, what I said as a child was put down and criticized. So that even goes to giving gifts, choosing partners, etc. Not just me, it's most people that come into his world, which means that there's an exaggerated column 5 and 12 where it's not just me, but most people, not saying all people, but most people. So definitely would be worth doing your father then, to go and clear that dynamic, so you can clear how you, as a byproduct, then shift how you feel about yourself, and then how that might then impact and change so that you show up differently in the world. All right, team. So thank you so much for coming along. Please remember, we have our doors open in April, so keep an eye out for all our emails. If you do know someone who would love and benefit, they do not have to have known the Demartini method. They can come along. If you have other people who are familiar with the work and you know them and love to invite them into the community, it would be amazing to bring them in, and I'd love to see them as part of our growing community. So thank you so much. Keep an eye out, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day or evening wherever you are in the world. I will see you in your many parts until I see you in your one. All right, take care. See you, Carmel. Great to see you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you, Jessie. Everyone, you guys.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, team. Have a beautiful night. Bye.